Hey there, welcome to the complete Morrigan guide for Season 6. If you want to choose who the next guide will be, check out the Patreon page linked below, but let's get right into this guide with the contents. So first up, we'll cover Morrigan's basic playstyle and what she's all about, then all of her abilities in depth, what they do and the best ways to use them. This should be a pretty interesting one for the Morrigan. After that, items and builds, where I'll discuss my favourite items for Morrigan and a build example. And finally, we'll close out the guide with a few tips and tricks to up your game on Morrigan. Alright, so this has been a highly requested guide for a long time, so let's dive right into it with Morrigan's basic playstyle. So the Morrigan, as we'll cover in the next section, plays quite differently from your generic burst mage. She plays almost like a magical assassin in some regards, and then of course can fill nearly any role she needs for 10 seconds with that ultimate. She'll often be looking to get in, blow someone up with her basic abilities, and then use that ultimate to continue fighting or get out. The Morrigan is mostly seen in mid lane, but she has seen some success in jungle and solo as well. But we will be focusing on her mid lane for this guide, as that is where you see her most of the time. Okay, let's now cover the Morrigan's abilities in depth and the best ways to use them. Alright, so the Morrigan's passive and basic kit is quite simple to balance out the complexity and skill requirements of using her ultimate effectively. So her passive is basically an auto attack augment that activates at the end of her 3-stage attack chain. She'll auto attack twice as normal, and then the third auto will explode on contact with a target, terrain, or at max range, doing the normal damage in a small AoE and also applying a damage over time effect to everyone hit that will do 9% of their maximum health over 3 seconds. This is magical damage, not true damage though, so it will be reduced by protections. So yeah, as I mentioned, pretty simple passive. This mostly helps Mori clear waves early game and poke as well, since you can often splash the damage onto gods while you're trying to clear waves with this. The tick damage portion here can also be relevant against certain gods like stealth gods or gods that can fly, as they may die to the tick damage trying to get away from you, or you can track them through stealth using the damage over time effect. Alright, so the Morrigan's 1, Deadly Aspects, creates 2 clones of herself at her sides when cast. She can then cancel the ability at no cost if she wants to, or if she chooses to activate the ability again, she strikes in a close range cone in front of her, dealing damage and stunning all enemies hit for 1 second. This does 80 up to 300 plus 80% scaling in damage on a 12-second cooldown, so this can really chunk squishies late game, and you can reset quite fast and go back in if you have some CDR. So this is part 1 of Morrigan's burst combo, the second part we'll cover later on, but this is also Morrigan's only form of CC outside her ultimate, so be sure to use it wisely. This will also make a lot of noise in most skins when you activate it, similar to a Loki 3 to alert people you're around. So if you are using this from stealth, you'll want to activate it early before you go in to prevent them hearing you. And as I mentioned, this is a 2-stage ability, so you can activate it and then cancel if you decide you don't want to use it at no cost, and it won't take the cooldown. Alright, so the second part of her burst combo, Morrigan's 2, is Dark Omen. The Morrigan throws a wave of dark magic forward, damaging all enemies in a line, dealing bonus damage to minions, and applying an omen to gods that can be activated by either Morrigan herself or her other teammates damaging that god. When the omen activates, it deals additional damage. So this is Mori's main wave clear tool early on, as it can easily hit the full wave and has that bonus minion damage to help her clear a bit better. But the omen this leaves behind means you can also use it to follow up with your 1 to activate the omen on top of the 1's damage and really chunk people. These 2 abilities are really where Morrigan gets her bursty playstyle from outside of her ultimate. And the last of her basic abilities, Mori's 3, Confusion, stealths the Morrigan for up to 6 seconds, granting her up to 40% additional movement speed, and creates a decoy clone of herself on activation wherever she was looking. The clone will walk aimlessly to where she cast it to and then stand still. While stealthed, any damage Morrigan takes will reveal her, including minion damage and dot effects. And she will also be revealed as soon as she attacks from stealth, be that abilities or basic attacks, losing the movement speed. So this is sort of the final puzzle piece and activator for Morrigan's playstyle of almost a magical assassin, excluding her ultimate. Stealthing in behind enemy lines and nuking a carry using 1-2 or 2-1, and then getting out safely or using the ultimate is your bread and butter combo as the Morrigan. The long duration stealth allows you to activate it from very far away and still be able to get deep into the enemy backline without them noticing to execute a carry before they can react. This ability can also be used for running away quite effectively as well with the movement speed, just watch out for damage over time effects, minions and the like that can reveal you. Alright, so let's finally cover the ability you probably all came here for, Morrigan's ultimate, Changeling. So this ult is unlike anything else in the game, and it takes a lot of getting used to. It's also where a lot of Morrigan's skill ceiling comes from, as there's so many different ways to use this. So Morrigan can pick any gods in the current match, excluding herself or another Morrigan for obvious reasons. and transform into them for 10 seconds, taking their build, level, stats, and abilities for the duration. She will, however, retain her own relics and cannot use consumables while ulting. She also doesn't gain the ability level order of her target, instead it takes her own level order and mirrors it onto the enemy's abilities. So for example, if you're leveling your 2 as Morrigan and ult into a Thanatos, you'll have his movement speed and penetration boost maxed out, not Death Scythe. So that's definitely something you need to be aware of, either ult into someone else in that case or level your abilities differently. So here's the issue with trying to make a Morrigan guide. It's extremely hard to tell you exactly when and who you should be ulting into because it varies so much from game to game on who your comp is, who the enemy comp is, your leveling order, the stage of the game you're in. Are you sieging or taking an objective? Is it mostly a lane fight or a jungle fight? There's so many factors to consider that it really just takes a lot of practice and experience when playing the Morrigan. Usually though, bursty assassins and mages are better than hunters for example, since you can dump their entire kit very quickly in the 10 seconds you get, whereas hunters are like a bit less focused on burst damage but more sustained damage over long periods of time, and the 10 seconds you get doesn't support that as well as a burst mage. But sometimes you need a frontliner or a support for your ultimate, it really does depend massively. I'd recommend watching some good Morrigan players in the SPL or just on YouTube to get a feel for who they ult into and when. And finally, this ult has the longest cooldown in the entire game at rank 1 with 160 seconds, but it does scale down to below average for ultimates at 80 seconds at rank 5, so make sure you're ranking this bad boy up whenever you can. Alright, so for a Morrigan leveling order, take the 2 at level 1 for wave clear, level 2 take the 1 for extra clear and burst damage when fighting, level 3 you can either get a second point in the 2, which is what I like to do, or you can get the 3 if you feel you need the safety for it. Level 4 get the 3 or the second point in the 2 if you didn't get it of course, and at level 5 you obviously get the ultimate. From there, max the 2, then the 1, then the 3, putting points into the ultimate whenever it's available for the cooldown reduction. Alright, so with the Morrigan's abilities covered, let's jump into the build section, where I'll talk about my favourite items for Morrigan and why I use them, and then conclude with a full build example at the end for those just looking for a quick build to jump in with. So for your start on Morrigan mid, Mage's Blessing is great for you as it helps your early game clear and poke a lot, plus that extra mana regen is great. Then for me, I really like Book of Thoth on Morrigan, as I'll explain later, so I like to get tier 1 book and then 2 health and 1 mana potion to finish it off. You can also go for a riskier option with tier 1 book and no blessing, but personally I prefer the early game boost that the blessing gives. Alright, so for your boots on the Morrigan, I really like Shoes of Focus on her right now, as of course the CDR on Morrigan is essential for that ultimate being so important and powerful. Plus the extra mana is really nice from these to help her fairly high mana costs out a little bit. But if you do want that aggressive early damage option, you can also go Shoes of the Magi on her as well for the early penetration. I think both are decent, but I do prefer Shoes of Focus. From there, I highly recommend Book of Thoth on Morrigan, as I mentioned earlier. Mori is looking more for that late game anyway, so as long as you can get this stacked in the earlier stages, it's insanely good for her, since her scalings are pretty high on the 2 and the 1, and she does sort of need that extra power that Book of Thoth provides to be able to burst people down and one-shot them with her 2-1 combo. Plus other items for Morrigan, like the CDR boots and others we'll cover in a second, have a lot of mana that synergize quite well with this item. After boots and Book of Thoth, your build starts to diversify a little bit and you'll need to adjust it based on the current game, but here's my favourite items for the Morrigan. So Bumba's Mask in my opinion is essential to any Morrigan build. It's not an item that you see on many other gods, especially not mages, but for Morrigan it really complements her playstyle of vanishing, running into the midst of the enemy team, bursting one person down and then ulting or getting out. Having that extra speed combined with confusion, her stealth ability, is insanely powerful for her. For your penetration, Spear of Desolation and Obsidian Shard are usually my go-tos. Having both of these combined in my build gives me plenty of shred against both tanks and squishies, but it is worth noting that you may want Divine Ruin in the build against healers, either in addition to or in place of Spear of Desolation. Polynomicon is another item that you don't see too often on mages, but it works wonders for the Morrigan. Adding that extra auto attack in between or after her 2-1 combo often gives you that bit of extra burst that you need to truly one-shot a squishy. This is another pretty much essential item for the Morrigan in my opinion. Plus it also has 300 mana, which is 27 extra power from Book of Thoth. What's not to love? Chronos Pendant is another item that I like a lot for the crazy CDR it gives. It's not essential by any means, but if you have room in your build, it will reduce your ultimate's cooldown by more than any other item, and will also allow you to reset your burst combo quicker and get back into the fight. You gotta be careful to not overcap CDR with this though. Since Shoes of Focus, Spear of Deso, and Bumbas all come with 10% each already, you're at 30%, and then of course Pendant gives 20%, but if you do really like Pendant, maybe skip the CDR boots and get Pen boots instead so that you can fit it into your build. Soul Reaver is similar to Polynomicon in that it adds to your burst combo, but personally I do prefer Poly. but if you have room in the build, it doesn't hurt to grab both either. It also has that same 300 mana for the Book of Thoth passive as well. So Morrigan's builds usually aren't as diverse as other mages because she has many items that are basically core or essential for her, but the final item I can recommend is Magi's Cloak. This isn't always necessary and you have to analyse the game you're in and if you really need it or not, because sometimes it might just be better to get more burst damage items, but if you're getting heavily focused out by a few hard CCs, this can be a life-saving pickup. Alright, so with my item explanations covered, let's get into that full build example for Morrigan mid lane. Start off with Mage's Blessing, tier 1 book, 2 health and 1 mana potion, grab Shoes of Focus, finish your book into the Book of Thoth, then get Bumba's Mask, Spear of Desolation, Polynomicon, sell your blessing for Obsidian Shard, and if the game goes long enough, sell your boots for Soul Reaver and get the Elixir of Speed. Alright, so with all that covered, let's round out the guide with some bonus tips and tricks for the Morrigan. So as I've mentioned before, utilising Morrigan's stealth is key to using her basic kit effectively. Since you only really have 3 abilities at your disposal, being able to use them effectively and not waste them is key. Generally, you want to use Morrigan's stealth aggressively. It lasts up to 6 seconds, so you can actually stealth in your own team's backline and run all the way to the enemy's backline to assassinate a carry pretty easily. Especially when you factor in the extra Boomer's Mask movement speed. If you can get in and nuke a carry, then you want to fall back on your ultimate to either get yourself out or continue fighting afterwards with your team. Even with a lot of Morrigan playtime, I still can't explain to you exactly who is the best transformation for every scenario, but I found it helps to watch other people play Mori and try to rationalise in my own head why they ulted into the person they did at that time. Was it maybe the enemy mage because they needed to nuke someone? Was it a warrior to survive longer after they'd gone in and assassinated someone and provide a second frontline presence? An assassin to quickly get out after nuking someone with your basic kit? That's the issue with playing Morrigan really. A lot of being a top tier Morrigan player is using her ultimate effectively, and that mostly comes down to having a lot of experience. So commit to playing and learning her and you'll get better and better at judging the situation and what you need from her ultimate. She's a very unique god in that way. Just try not to fall under the map or lose the ability to use auto attacks while you do it. Alright, so that's it from me for the complete Morrigan guide for Season 6. As always, let me know who you'd like me to cover next, and if you did enjoy or learnt something from this guide, then be sure to subscribe for more in the future. Have a great day, and peace out you nerds.